The roar of 50 motorcycles shattered the quiet gas station as little Sarah's world suddenly went silent. Her mother's breathing had changed, and she knew something was terribly wrong. In desperate courage, the blind 8-year-old reached out and grabbed the leather-clad arm of the most feared man in 3 counties. But what happened next would change everything they thought they knew about angels and demons. Before we dive into today's incredible story, if you believe in the power of unexpected heroes and second chances, please hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your support helps us bring more of these amazing true stories to light. The August heat shimmered off the asphalt at Murphy's gas station on Route 66, just outside Amarillo, Texas. Margaret Chen gripped her daughter Sarah's hand as they walked slowly from their old Honda Civic toward the convenience store. Sarah's white cane swept gently across the ground, her movements practiced and confident despite her 8 years of complete darkness. "5 more steps to the door, sweetheart," Margaret said softly, her voice carrying that special tone mothers use when guiding their blind children, patient, loving, precise. Sarah nodded, her acute hearing already painting a detailed picture of their surroundings. The hum of the gas pumps, the distant buzz of the highway, the squeak of the store's air conditioning unit, each sound was a brushstroke in her mental canvas. Inside, the blessed coolness wrapped around them. Sarah heard the clerk's newspaper rustle, smelled coffee that had been sitting too long, and felt the subtle vibration of the refrigerator units through the floor. Margaret guided her to the drink section. "What flavor today, baby girl?" Margaret asked, though her voice sounded strange, thinner somehow, like she was speaking through cotton. "Orange, please," Sarah replied, tilting her head. Something was different about her mother's breathing. It was faster, shallower. Sarah had been listening to that breathing for 8 years, through nighttime stories and morning songs, through laughter and tears. She knew every rhythm, every pattern. "Mom," Sarah's voice carried a note of concern. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetie, just the heat." But Margaret's hand was trembling slightly in Sarah's grip, and her palm felt clammy. The rumble started as a distant thunder, growing louder and louder until it shook the very windows of the store. Sarah's head snapped toward the sound. Motorcycles, many of them. The rumble crescendoed, and then died as engines were cut one by one. "Bikers!" the clerk muttered, and Sarah heard the sharp intake of his breath, the nervous shuffle of his feet. Through the door came the sound of heavy boots, chains jingling, leather creaking. Sarah counted the footsteps, many men walking with the confident swagger of those who owned whatever space they entered. The store suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. "Mom, your breathing sounds funny," Sarah whispered, but Margaret didn't respond. Her grip on Sarah's hand loosened. Then it happened. Margaret's hand slipped away entirely, and Sarah heard the terrible sound of her mother's body crumpling to the floor. The thud seemed to echo in the sudden silence. "Mum? Mum!" Sarah dropped to her knees, her hands frantically searching for her mother's face. She found it, too still, too quiet. The breathing she'd been worried about had become barely a whisper. Panic exploded in Sarah's chest. She could hear the bikers nearby, smell their leather and motorcycle exhaust. One was closer than the others. She could hear his breathing, steady and deep, could smell something like pine and motor oil. Without thinking, without planning, Sarah shot out her hand and grabbed what she found, a leather-clad arm, thick as a tree branch. She held on with both hands, her small fingers digging in desperately. "Please," she gasped, "please help. My mom, she's diabetic, she's not breathing right." The arm went rigid under her grip. Sarah heard the sharp intake of breath, felt the man's surprise ripple through his body. Around them, she heard movement stop, boots freezing mid-step, conversations cutting off mid-word. "Jesus," a gruff voice above her said. It came from the owner of the arm, deep, gravelly, like rocks tumbling in a barrel. "Little girl, you're—" "Please," Sarah interrupted, tears streaming down her face. "I can hear it in her breathing. She needs help now." She shook the arm with all her might, not caring that this was a stranger, not caring about anything except the fading whispers of her mother's breath. The leather-clad arm Sarah gripped belonged to Marcus "Tank" Williams, president of the Savage Riders Motorcycle Club. At 6'4" and 250 pounds of muscle and scars, Tank had made grown men cross the street to avoid him, but the tiny hands clutching his arm with desperate strength froze him in place. "She's blind," someone whispered behind him, probably Rocket, always stating the obvious. Tank's eyes darted from the little girl's unseeing gaze to the woman on the floor. Her skin had taken on a greyish pallor, and her breathing was indeed shallow and irregular. His paramedic training from his army days kicked in before his brain fully processed what was happening. "Diabetic," he said, dropping to one knee beside Margaret. "Sugar crash. Rocket, get orange juice from the cooler. Now!" His voice boomed with authority. "Chains, call 911. Tell them we have a diabetic emergency at Murphy's on Route 66. Possible severe hypoglycemia." Sarah hadn't let go of his arm. If anything, her grip tightened. "Is she going to be okay? Why isn't she answering me?" Tank's heart, which had been hardened by years on the road and a lifetime of people fearing him, cracked a little. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Sarah Chen." "Okay, Sarah, I'm Tank. Your mom's sugar got too low, but we're going to help her. Can you tell me if she has a glucose kit?" Sarah shook her head frantically. "She keeps juice boxes in her purse, but we forgot it in the car. She said she felt fine, but I knew. I could hear it in her breathing. It changed about 10 minutes ago." Tank was stunned. This child had detected her mother's medical emergency through subtle changes in breathing patterns. "You're a smart girl, Sarah. You did the right thing asking for help." Rocket appeared with orange juice and several candy bars. Tank gently opened Margaret's mouth, checking to make sure she could swallow. "Sarah, I need to prop your mom up a little and give her some juice. She might cough. Don't be scared." "Tell me everything," Sarah pleaded. "I need to know what's happening." And so Tank did something he'd never done before. He became someone's eyes. "All right, I'm lifting her head now, very gently. Rocket, he's my friend. He's holding the orange juice. I'm going to pour just a tiny bit in her mouth." The store had filled with bikers, but they were silent as church mice, watching their fearsome leader tend to a fallen woman while a blind child clung to his arm like a lifeline. "She swallowed," Tank reported. "That's good. A little more now." "Her breathing sounds better," Sarah said, her head tilted in concentration. Tank checked Margaret's pulse. The kid was right. It was already steadier. "You've got incredible hearing, Sarah." "I have to," she said simply. "It's how I see." More juice, slow and careful. Margaret's eyelids fluttered. Tank kept up his narration. "Her eyes are starting to open. Colors coming back to her face. There we go. She's looking at me now." "Mom?" Sarah's voice broke. "Sarah?" Margaret's voice was weak but present. "What? Oh, God, my sugar." "Mom, don't try to sit up yet," Tank said gently. "Let's get more juice in you first. Your daughter saved your life." She knew something was wrong and got help. Margaret's eyes focused on the massive biker kneeling beside her, then travelled to where Sarah's small hands still gripped his arm. Her maternal instincts warred with her gratitude. "I'm so sorry, Sarah, honey. You can let go." "No." Sarah's grip tightened. "Not until I know you're really okay." "Smart kid," someone murmured from the crowd of bikers. Tank looked at Margaret. "We've called an ambulance. They'll check you out properly. But your daughter's right. You should let them look at you." "I thank you," Margaret said, struggling to process the scene. Here she was, surrounded by what looked like an entire motorcycle gang, being tended to with incredible gentleness, while her blind daughter held onto their leader like he was a guardian angel. "Mom, they helped," Sarah said firmly. "All of them. I heard them. One got juice, one called for help. They all stopped what they were doing." Tank found himself smiling. "A rare occurrence. That's what we do, little warrior. We look out for people." The ambulance siren wailed in the distance, growing closer. Tank started to stand, but Sarah's grip didn't loosen. "You won't leave?" she asked. "Not until they make sure she's okay?" Tank looked down at this brave little girl who had grabbed onto the first person she could reach, trusting a stranger's arm in her moment of desperate need. He settled back down. "I'm not going anywhere, Sarah. None of us are. That's a promise." The paramedics burst through the door 8 minutes later. their equipment clattering and radios crackling. Sarah finally released Tank's arm, but stayed close enough that her shoulder touched his leather vest. She tracked every sound, her head moving like a radar dish, following the medical team's movements. "Blood sugars at 45, one paramedic announced after pricking Margaret's finger. "You guys did good getting juice in her. Probably saved her from going fully unconscious." "That was Tank," Rocket said proudly. "Used to be a medic in Afghanistan." Sarah's hand found Tank's arm again, this time gently exploring. "You were a soldier?" "Long time ago," Tank said quietly, watching the paramedics work. "Ma'am, we need to transport you to Amarillo General for observation," the lead paramedic said to Margaret. "Your levels are stabilizing, but with diabetes, we need to monitor—" "I can't," Margaret interrupted weakly. "I don't have. The insurance lapsed when my husband—" She trailed off, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. The store went quiet except for the hum of refrigerators. Sarah's face turned toward her mother. "Mom, it's okay, baby. I'll be fine. I just need to rest." "The hell you will," Tank said, standing abruptly. He pulled out a worn leather wallet. "She's going to the hospital. I'm covering it." "Sir, that's not necessary." "Did I stutter?" Tank's voice carried the authority of a man used to being obeyed. He looked at his brothers. "Everybody chip in what you can, now." What happened next would have made the evening news if anyone had filmed it. 50 bikers, men who looked like they ate danger for breakfast, began pulling out wallets, emptying pockets, producing crumpled bills and worn credit cards. The pile on the counter grew steadily. "I got 50. Here's 80. Take my emergency 100. Sarah's head swiveled, tracking each voice, each gesture. "Mom, they're all helping. Every single one." Margaret began to cry. "I can't accept—" "Yes, you can," said a biker with a long grey beard, Preacher, the club's treasurer. "That little girl grabbed Tank when she needed help. That makes you family now." The paramedics prepared the stretcher, and Margaret reached for Sarah. "You'll have to come in the ambulance with me, baby." "Actually," Tank said, "if it's okay with you, Mom, some of us could follow. Make sure you both get settled. Sarah can ride in the ambulance with you, but we'll be right behind." Sarah turned toward his voice. "You'd do that, little warrior. You grabbed my arm and asked for help. In my world, that means something. We don't leave people behind." As the paramedics wheeled Margaret toward the door, Sarah walking alongside holding her mother's hand, she said something that stopped everyone in their tracks. "I've never seen a motorcycle." The bikers exchanged glances. Tank cleared his throat. "What do you mean, Sarah?" "I mean, I've heard them. I know what they sound like, but I've never seen one, never touched one. Mum's always been too afraid to let me near one when we hear them." Margaret, despite her weakness, managed a small laugh. "I suppose that fear seems silly now, doesn't it?" Tank knelt down to Sarah's level. "Tell you what, after your mum's feeling better, after the doctors say she's good to go, would you like to see our bikes with your hands?" Sarah's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? You'd let me touch them? Every chrome pipe, every leather seat, every single handle. We'll show you what freedom feels like." As they loaded Margaret into the ambulance, 50 of the toughest men in Texas stood in the parking lot, many wiping their eyes and blaming the dust. They'd come to this gas station for fuel and snacks, following their usual Saturday run. They'd leave it having been reminded of something they'd almost forgotten, that beneath the leather and scars and fearsome reputation, they were still capable of being someone's heroes. "Mount up!" Tank called out after the ambulance doors closed. "We're escorting them to Amarillo General. Rocket, you take point. Chains, watch our 6. And everybody, ride gentle. We've got a little girl listening." The thunder of 50 motorcycles starting in unison shook the windows of Murphy's gas station, but this time it sounded different to everyone who heard it. It sounded like protection. It sounded like hope. Inside the ambulance, Sarah pressed her face to the small window, even though she couldn't see the bikes flanking them on both sides, creating a protective corridor all the way to the hospital. But she could hear them, and for the first time in her 8 years, the sound of motorcycles didn't mean danger. It meant safety. It meant kindness. It meant friends. The hospital waiting room became their temporary headquarters. Tank organized his brothers with military precision. Some stayed outside with the bikes, others rotated through in shifts. The staff watched nervously as leather-clad bikers filled the sterile space, but they kept quiet, reading magazines and speaking in hushed tones. Sarah sat in a plastic chair, her cane propped beside her, sipping juice a nurse had brought. Heavy footsteps approached, that familiar scent of leather and pine. "Hey, little warrior," Tank's gravelly voice came from above. "Mind if I sit?" Sarah patted the chair beside her. "Mum's with the doctors. They said her sugar crashed really bad." Tank lowered himself carefully, the chair creaking. "She'll be okay. You saved her life, you know that." "I was so scared," Sarah admitted. "When I heard your motorcycles, I got more scared. But then I didn't have a choice." "You grabbed the first person you could reach," Tank said softly. "That took real courage." Sarah tilted her head. "You were a soldier, weren't you? Rocket said you were a medic. Long time ago. Afghanistan." His voice carried weight. "Lost some good friends there. Is that why you helped? Because you know how to?" Tank was quiet. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Maybe, or maybe because." He paused. "I had a daughter once, Emily, about your age." Sarah's hand found his, small fingers wrapping around calloused ones. "What happened to her?" "Car accident, 5 years ago." The words came hard. "When you grabbed my arm, just for a second, I thought." "She was lucky to have you," Sarah said simply. "I can tell. You have a dad voice, kind but strong." Tank squeezed her hand, unable to speak. 2 hours later, Margaret emerged in a wheelchair, looking exhausted but stable. Sarah jumped up at the sound. "Mom!" "I'm okay, baby." Margaret looked at the bikers filling the waiting room, her eyes wide. "I don't know how to thank you all." Preacher stepped forward with an envelope. "Ma'am, we took up a collection, $3,200, for the hospital bills and whatever else you need." Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. "I can't." "You can," Tank said firmly. "Your daughter's courage earned our respect. This is what family does." "The insurance lapsed when my husband died," Margaret whispered. "I've been trying, but no explanations needed." Tank cut her off gently. "Let's get you home." They formed a convoy, Rocket's truck carrying Margaret and Sarah, 5 bikes following. At their small rental house on Maple Street, the bikers helped them inside, checking the house, stocking juice in the fridge. "Mr. Tank," Sarah tugged his vest. "You promised. About seeing the motorcycles." Tank smiled, a real smile. "Tomorrow afternoon? If your mum's feeling better?" "Please, Mum," Sarah bounced excitedly. Margaret nodded, overwhelmed. "After everything you've done." "A promise is a promise," Tank said. "Besides, I've never shown someone my bike the way Sarah will see it." Sunday arrived bright and clear. Sarah had been up since dawn, baking cookies and practically vibrating with anticipation. At exactly 3 o'clock, the rumble of motorcycles filled Maple Street. Not just Tank, but 20 bikes parking in perfect formation. "They're here!" Sarah shrieked, racing to the porch. Tank approached, offering his arm. "Ready to see a motorcycle, little warrior?" Sarah took his arm like royalty. "I made cookies, 3 dozen. Then let's do this properly." He led her to his Harley-Davidson Road King. "This is redemption. Put your hands out." What followed was the most detailed motorcycle tour in history. Tank guided Sarah's hands over every surface, explaining each part with infinite patience. "The handlebars curve like this so I can reach comfortably. These grips are worn smooth from years of riding. This lever is the brake." Sarah's fingers explored eagerly. "It's warm, and I can feel vibrations like it's breathing." "Exactly right." "Want to sit on her?" "Can I?" Sarah's voice pitched high with excitement. Tank lifted her onto the seat. Her feet dangled, but she gripped the handlebars reverently. "It's so high. Is this how it feels when you ride?" "Better. With wind and motion, it's like flying while staying connected to Earth. Can you start it? Please, I want to hear it." Tank glanced at Margaret, who nodded. He mounted behind Sarah, keeping her secure. "Ready!" The Harley roared to life. Instead of covering her ears, Sarah spread her arms wide, laughing with pure joy. "I can feel it everywhere, in my bones. Is this what freedom sounds like?" Yeah, little warrior, that's exactly what it sounds like. Other bikers offered their bikes. Each was different. Chain's Softail rumbled deeper. Rocket's Sportster felt lighter. Preacher's vintage Panhead carried decades of stories in its worn metal. This dent? Preacher guided her fingers. Sturgis, 87, hailstorm, baseball-sized hail. This scratch? Sarah found another mark. My wife dropped it on our wedding day, gave it character. The afternoon flew by. Margaret watched her daughter bloom under their attention while the bikers transformed, speaking softly, moving carefully, sharing stories they'd buried for years. As sunset approached, Tank called everyone together. Sarah, we took a vote. He produced a child-sized leather vest. On the back, instead of their usual emblem, beautiful embroidery read, Honorary Savage Rider, with angel wings. You're one of us now, Tank said, helping her into it. Under our protection, always. Sarah traced the embroidery, tears streaming. Really? I'm really a savage rider. The bravest one, Tank confirmed. You taught us that courage isn't about being tough. It's about reaching out, about trust, about love. There's more, he continued. Your mom's medical bills, insulin, doctors. We're helping, not charity. Family. You're our sister now. As they prepared to leave, each biker hugged Sarah goodbye. Tank knelt for the last farewell. Thank you for showing me freedom, Sarah whispered against his neck, and for saving Mom, and for being my friend. Thank you, he whispered back, for reminding me who I can still be. The motorcycles roared away, but their promise remained. In the following weeks, they proved family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. They covered medical bills without being asked, fixed Margaret's car when it broke, installed a ramp when the doctor suggested it. When Margaret found a job, Preacher's connection, and her car died at midnight, 4 bikes appeared within minutes. Sarah became their official baker. Sunday rides often ended at Maple Street, cookies and laughter filling the small house. She knew each biker by voice, by the sound of their bike, by the feel of their jacket. When the school announced a father-daughter dance, Sarah tried to hide her disappointment. Tank showed up in his cleanest leathers, offering his arm. "Would you do me the honor, little warrior?" Sarah cried, Margaret cried, and if some bikers blamed the dust for their watery eyes, nobody mentioned it. At the district spelling bee, 20 leather-clad men cheered louder than all other parents combined. When Sarah won, they lifted her on their shoulders, her honorary vest gleaming. But the most profound change was in how Sarah heard motorcycles. No longer did the rumble mean danger. It meant protection, love, family. It meant friends who taught her that angels sometimes trade wings for wheels. One evening, months later, Sarah sat with Tank on the porch, listening to distant motorcycles. "Tank?" she asked. "Do you think Emily would have liked me?" His voice was thick. "She would have loved you, little warrior. You two would have been best friends." "Maybe we are," Sarah said thoughtfully. "Maybe she sent me to grab your arm that day. Maybe she knew you needed reminding about who you are inside." Tank pulled the remarkable child close. "Maybe she did. I was wrong about the sound," Sarah continued. "It's not what freedom sounds like. No, freedom sounds like promises kept, like family chosen, like love that roars up on motorcycles when you need it most." As if on cue, several bikes turned onto Maple Street, Rocket, Chains, Preacher and others, coming for their weekly visit. Sarah jumped up, her vest catching the porch light. "My brothers are here," she announced, running to greet them. Margaret joined Tank on the porch, watching Sarah navigate confidently to each biker, knowing them by sound alone. "She's changed them all," Margaret said softly. "They're different since that day." "She changed me," Tank corrected. "Reminded me that strength isn't about being feared. It's about being trusted by a scared little girl who needs help." The evening filled with laughter, stories, and the comfortable chaos of chosen family. Neighbors no longer feared the motorcycles on Maple Street. They knew it meant Sarah's family had arrived. As night fell and the bikers prepared to leave, Sarah performed her ritual of goodbye hugs. Each man accepted her embrace like a blessing. These tough riders who'd learned that sometimes the smallest hands can lift the heaviest hearts. "Same time next week?" Sarah called out. "Wouldn't miss it, little warrior," Tank confirmed. "Family dinner, right?" "Right! Mom's making her famous spaghetti." The motorcycles started in sequence, but before pulling away, they revved in unison, their special goodbye just for Sarah. She stood on the porch, waving until the last rumble faded, her unseeing eyes bright with joy. "Mom?" Sarah said, fingering her vest. "I think we're the luckiest people in the world." "Why's that, baby?" "Because we learned something important. Heroes don't always wear capes or wings. Sometimes they wear leather and ride motorcycles and keep promises and show up when you need them most." Margaret hugged her daughter close, thinking about that desperate day at Murphy's gas station. How Sarah's brave grab for help had opened their lives to this unlikely family. How 50 tough bikers had become their guardians, friends, brothers. In the distance, a lone motorcycle rumbled through the night, but Sarah didn't tense or worry. She simply smiled, knowing that somewhere out there, her family was riding, watching, protecting. The little blind girl who saw with her heart had taught them all the most important lesson. Love comes in many forms. Family is what you make it. And sometimes, when you're brave enough to reach out in your darkest moment, you'll find that angels have traded their wings for wheels, and they're ready to catch you when you fall. Sarah went to bed that night wearing her honorary vest, the leather soft against her cheek. In her dreams, she rode with her brothers through endless highways, the wind in her hair, the rumble in her chest, free and protected and loved. And somewhere across town, Tank sat on his bike, looking at the stars. "Thank you, Emily," he whispered, "for sending her to me." And the night wind carried his words away, but the feeling remained. Redemption found in the grip of small hands, purpose restored by a blind child's trust, and family forged in the most unlikely circumstances. The Savage Riders had started as a motorcycle club. They'd become something more. Guardians of Maple Street, protectors of two hearts they'd helped heal, proof that sometimes the scariest-looking people have